Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast, the final Premiership review episode for season 2023-24. I am your host Craig Fowler and I am joined by Craig Anderson. Hello Craig.
Hi, how you doing?
Been better. Very end of season vibe I think this episode is going to be, and I've come with the mindset of a player who had nothing to play for before the last weekend and therefore got very drunk. And that's going to reflect in my hungover performance, because even though it's a Monday, I still feel a bit like crap from Saturday, because Saturday was a long one, what with the early kickoff and me getting the last train back to Glasgow after the Hearts Rangers game. But enough about me. How are you feeling, Craig, on this decent, warm but overcast Monday afternoon in Glasgow?
Yeah, I'm feeling all right. Supposed to be working right now, as usual. Pretty much every podcast I'm doing recently, but so I'm enjoying having a wee hour out to do that. The one saving grace we had is we were a 90th minute goal in midweek away from this being us talking about 6 dead rubbers.
Yeah.
So at least there are a couple of games that have something hanging on them to talk about, but generally good. Generally looking forward, obviously for both of us, an enjoyable season, and looking forward to less than a month away. A big tournament to look forward to, which we've not had for a long time.
Absolutely. Especially, we'd had Euro 2020, but that almost feels like it didn't count in terms of what you were restricted in terms of travelling, going to games, the fact that the 3 matches involving Scotland were in Scotland and England. Just wasn't the same. It's not what you expect from a major tournament. So we've got a proper one finally, where we can run wild and free through Germany. But talking about this weekend, it did have kind of everything of what you usually have in a last weekend of a league season. As you mentioned, there was something to play for, so we had kind of drama, and there was some late drama. There wasn't a late goal, but there was late drama, and that is like kind of historically, maybe it's historically too strong, maybe not. Like you'd say, like at least in recent history, kind of defining drama. And then you also had games where the players don't care enough, so they just serve you up an enjoyable pile of nonsense that's just very good fun. And then we also had games. It's certainly one game. You can maybe tell me about the Killie game, but certainly one game where it was the players don't really give a shit and serve up the fans 90 minutes of boredom.
I think, you see it seems to happen in every league around the world, that when you get to these last games of the season, especially the games that don't matter, but even sometimes ones that do, there's suddenly goals flying in left, right and centre. And we had that this weekend.
Yeah.
Some good ones as well. But yeah, it's like nobody will remember most of these games. So we're really setting the scene for a really enjoyable podcast. Like, definitely worth hanging on to for another 45 minutes.
Right, well, let's begin with the stuff that certainly mattered, and that was the 2 games at the bottom of the table. Livingston already down, of course. They played against Hibs in the dead rubber in the matches that took place on Sunday. But there was a lot to play for in the other 2. St Johnstone going away to Motherwell, and St Johnstone securing their top flight status for another season, winning 2-1, while Ross County were held to a 2-2 draw with Aberdeen. We'll talk about St Johnstone's games first of all. I think the defining thing for this one, and just so I'll go to you first of all, just so I'm not speaking for quite some length, but Mitoff's penalty save from Theo Bair, while the game was still at 1-0, Mitoff has been the real kind of shining light in St Johnstone's season overall. Like, I know Sidibe's come in since January and had a good impact himself, and without him, St Johnstone are probably heading into the playoffs, and I'm not even sure whether you'd fancy them to stay up. But he scored a decent chunk of goals, but over the course, it was Mitoff being the hero time and again. Even the one player that when they were having that dreadful run at the start of the season that actually gave them a bit of hope, and in the end, he's the one with a huge save. As I said, at 1-0, Sidibe then makes it 2-0 before half-time, and that ultimately gave St Johnstone enough of a cushion for them to secure their status.
Yeah, and I think it's he had, I would say, he had a wee dip in his form in the middle of the season where it was a couple of mistakes, but that's inevitable when he was being relied upon to do just so much across the season. But I think we spoke about it at the start of the campaign that it looked like a good signing for one of few that they made, and it's turned out that way. And it's a massive moment in your big players. You need a big player to come up in a big moment, and he did that. And as you say, I think with the way the games were kind of swinging back and forward, if Motherwell equalised at that point, does St Johnstone's heads go down? Does Ross County's tails come up? To use two different parts of the body for expressions. So yeah, I think it was a big turning point. It's probably the biggest contribution Theo Bair's made to St Johnstone, despite spending the entirety of last season there. I'm very glad because I hate encroachment from penalties. It must have been incredibly close. When I saw that angle, when they showed it, his back heel must have been just hovering over that line. But that I'm glad, because if it was me, I would just be completely binning ever looking at that in VAR. But it was a big save, and obviously made even bigger by the fact that they not that much later kind of went 2-0 up. But you said about Sidibe, I mean, you said maybe he wouldn't have, without him, they'd have been in the relegation spot. Absolutely they would have been, because that goal in midweek, it looked like they were heading for 10th for 11th without even getting the chance to take it to the last day. As soon as that went in, and having seen them actually play pretty well against Livingston last week and just miss a lot of chances, as soon as that went in, I thought, right, St Johnstone are probably doing this at the weekend, because you just got that vibe of Ross County basically had it sewn up and threw it away. And as soon as that happened and St Johnstone got kind of bouncing back, I thought if they can go out and win this game, and I think they will, because usually when you're not that much worse than the team you're playing against and you have everything to play for and they have nothing to play for, you're going to win. Unless you're falling apart. And that's the thing that I think has kept St Johnstone going through this season, despite at the start of the season they were dreadful and they were basically getting beat every week, and then they changed the manager obviously, and Levine coming in, I thought he'd have done it a bit more comfortably. I did think he'd keep them up, and what you've seen under them is, I don't think the heads have gone down. I don't think they've ever really chucked it in games. They lost a lot of games. Their form towards the end of the season, up until the last kind of 4 games, was dreadful. But they weren't getting thumped. And I mean, ultimately not getting thumped is also partly what's kept them up, because they stayed up in goal difference, where Ross County took a few absolute doings. Including one a few weeks ago against the same opposition that St Johnstone beat. So I think a lot of that aspect of it, they just feel like one of these teams that are just going to grind and grind and grind, and they did grind when it mattered, even if I don't know it was necessarily an amazing performance from St Johnstone. They probably rode the luck, not just with that penalty. There was that cavalcade of chances that Motherwell had come up midway through the second half, where you're like, how on earth did they not score? And again, obviously they concede the goal basically as late as you could conceivably concede a goal without it being full time. So there wasn't really a worry in the same sense. But had they conceded early, no matter who you are, you're going to panic at that point. And they were fortunate. If you can call it fortunate, it's good defending in parts as well. But they did well to not make it nervy for themselves, because I am a big believer that what happens in one game does absolutely affect what's going on in another game, and I think Ross County might have taken a lift from the other game getting closer as well, even though they still needed to score. I think these things do link up, and I think the crowd changes and everything changes. So I think it was massive, the penalty save obviously, but it was massive the chances that Motherwell didn't score in that second half as well.
Levine was getting a bit of stick afterwards still, because he did make what is kind of becoming like a classic kind of Levine move. I don't even know if that's true for his entire career, but certainly with the 4-6-0 following him around, he's certainly got a reputation of doing the most kind of negative things in terms of his tactics during games and starting games, and just being kind of all about the defensive side and not about the attacking side. And St Johnstone fans were certainly annoyed when, with 25 minutes to go, they brought off Nicky Clark and brought on Andrew Considine, and then just went with one up top. And as well, Sidibe was looking knackered by that point. So it was just like, all of a sudden, like, it was just like panicking too much. Like, okay, let's just try and just do whatever we can. We've got a 2-goal cushion. We can sit back if, we can make one mistake and let in one, but let's just try our best to just make sure for this half hour we keep a clean sheet kind of thing. And instead just invited on a lot of pressure that they maybe didn't need to do against the Motherwell side that didn't play with the same kind of intensity that maybe Aberdeen were. And I'll talk about Aberdeen in a second when we get to them. But yeah, that was certainly something you're like, oh, what are you doing? You just you don't have to shut up shop that early and then just invite so much pressure onto you.
Some managers just can't help themselves. I think it's just how they think about the game. But it's I guess in terms of the goals that St Johnstone scored, it is an incredible cross from Graham Carey for that opening goal. He is one of those players. I think you and I were talking about it on the Strikers podcast about it the weekend, of players who are only really good at one thing, but they are really, really, really good at it. And for me, for Graham Carey, it's crossing the ball, and especially crossing the ball from deep. It's been that way since, must be talking 15 years ago when he was playing for St Mirren. He's always been incredible with that left foot, just whipping crosses in. And this season, he's been okay for St Johnstone. He's probably been one of their better players, but that's not necessarily been saying much. And I think he's obviously had a lot going on in his own life, and I think it will be important for him that getting that big moment. And I think they can probably consider that to have been a worthwhile signing. But it's a really good goal, and Clark I was quite pleased for because I mean that game last week against Livingston, the chances that he passed up over and over again. So the fact that he kind of got the goal, which helped keep them up, was pretty big. And then, as we said, Sidibe 5 goals in his last 8 games, which is a very big contribution to a team at any position, but a team trying to stay up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And going back to the other side of the park for St Johnstone and talking about Meathoff again, this is what I got written down. So, over the last 10 years, so I'd said this earlier in the season when I was doing a podcast with Sean Hamilton, and I was trying to give him hope by saying, teams with good goalkeepers don't get relegated. And it's true. And so I've looked back at every team that's been relegated since 2014. So I'll work backwards. So this season, Livingston, Shamal George, good goalie last year. This season, definitely not had a good campaign. And when I'm using the goalies here, I'm using the keepers that have started the most league games for the clubs in both seasons. But you can probably imagine that in the vast, vast majority of cases, if not every case, the sub-goalie is shit as well. So then, 2023, it was only Dundee United went down. Mark Birighitti.
Yes, we know him.
2022, Dundee went down. That was Adam Legzdens. 2021, 2 teams went down. Hamilton Accies had Ryan Fulton playing the majority of their games. Ryan Fulton, when he's been fit, has had a very good season in League One this campaign, but a Premiership goalie he has never looked. And Kilmarnock also went down with Danny Rogers playing the majority of their games.
No, but when Danny Rogers then, because that Kelly were very much a 2-goalkeeper team, but unfortunately the other goalkeeper was Colin Doyle, who was worse. And the goalkeeper that we signed at the start of the season, who was meant to be, I think, our number one, Eastwood, who came in on loan, I think it was his name, on loan from Sheffield United, last 45 minutes of the game against Hibs, having both embarrassed himself and got injured. So that was a particular, I think Dundee United last season and Kelly in that relegation season are the 2 calamity goalkeeper, the sort of poster boys for your theory here.
Well, I'm going to get to an even bigger poster boy right now.
I'm forgetting that
2020 Hearts, Joe Pereira played the majority of the league games. You also had, you said Kelly had the 2 goalkeepers. Hearts had 3 that campaign. Bobby Lamal and, once again, Colin Doyle being involved in that. 2019, Dundee, Jack Hamilton. 2018, now 2 teams went down. Dundee went down with Scott Fox. Now, Scott Fox... Oh, sorry, I think I've written down Dundee again by mistake. I think it was Ross County I should have written there.
Yeah.
Scott Fox used to be a decent, I was going to say very good top flight goalie, that's a bit of a stretch. Used to be a good top flight goalie, but he certainly wasn't in 2018. Now, a possible outlier here or flaw in this theory. Partick Thistle went down with Thomas Cherney between the sticks. Now, I think this was, when I mentioned it before in the podcast, this was brought up by a Partick Thistle fan. I can't quite remember, but I've got a feeling that Cherney, as good as he was, didn't have a good season, that campaign, but I might be wrong there, so Thistle fans can maybe remind me, because he moved at the end of that campaign to Aberdeen and then played 2 games the rest of his career before retiring 3 years later, having just sat on the bench at Pittodrie the entire time he was there, pretty much. Back to 2017, Owen Ford Williams at Inverness. 2016 was E.G. Kawashima at Dundee United. Again, another team that had 3 goalkeepers. In fact, I think the 3 goalkeepers played at least 10 times each that season. 2015 was St Mirren with Mark Bridgers. And then 2014 is where you had keepers who were actually, well, certainly one that was good, and Jamie McDonald had a very good season for Hearts that year.
I mean, very extenuating circumstances at Hearts relegation.
And Ben Williams was all right at Hibs.
Brick wall Ben.
He was good at goalies, Mike. That was maybe the season before, so he might have been crap that season as well. So there you go. If you have a good goalkeeper like Dimitar Mitov, you don't get relegated.
But George Wickens made lots of saves in one game, Craig. So
well, they might stay up as well.
They might stay up. I
think they'll stay up as well. Laidlaw's a decent goalie. Not last weekend with his performance against Motherwell, but he did make there was a good save in this one with... Oh yeah, sorry, we should probably move on now, actually. Ross County 2, Aberdeen 2 was the other game. County opened the score through Simon Murray. Aberdeen scored twice to put them 2-1 in front, then had a goal disallowed. They would have saw them 3-1 ahead. Ross County got a penalty. Angus MacDonald was sent off. County scored the penalty. They still had 22 minutes plus, I think it was 9 minutes added on time in which to find the winner. They didn't. They did come close, though. Will Nightingale in stoppage time with a header that... I often think that headed chances are sometimes judged a little bit harshly, because I think people often look at a headed chance and think it's exactly the same. It's like a shot with your feet, and you'd kind of judge it on that merit, but that's not often the case. This is one that he definitely should have scored. Trying too hard to plant it into the corner, wherever you just get it on target for that distance, you're probably scoring.
They had, I mean, I don't think it appeared in the highlights, but I stuck the game on with about 25 minutes to go, and almost immediately they had about 4 chances in the space of a minute. I think Roos made a save, and someone, I think it may have been Danda, hit the bar from just outside the box. And so it felt like to me at that point, because I just put it on, I'd seen that there'd been the red card, I'd seen that it had gone back to 2-2, and they were doing this, and I thought, this goal is inevitable. But then, as much as they attacked a bit, Aberdeen probably looked just as likely to score, because they were quite dangerous on the counter at that point. So I don't think Ross County... I don't think they did enough, which sounds like I'm saying they didn't try hard enough. I just mean I don't think they made the most of the man advantage. I don't think they really could go away with regrets apart from that miss. I feel like they left a little bit out on the park, to be honest, and that will be pretty disappointing. Aberdeen, obviously, post-split, very good, but they were down to 10. They had less to play for than you, and I think they could have thrown the kitchen sink at it a wee bit more.
Yeah, you would know for watching it. I didn't manage to see the game, but you would know better for me for watching it. To me, I kind of thought, they should have, having had that long to go and just what was on the line, and the fact that Aberdeen had nothing to play for, you should be doing better than that. At the same time, I do also kind of have... I mean, sympathy is too strong a word, because they had it in the palm of their hands in the game away to St Johnstone. Should have saw that one out. Shouldn't have conceded in the last minute. Should have had the game, like St Johnstone fans themselves saying St Johnstone didn't play well in that match. County could have had them out of sight, decided to kind of try and sit in the lead rather than going out full and just winning it outright there and then. Sidibe scores that late goal, pushes it to the final day. So it's not really sympathy that I have for County, but I do feel they were a little unfortunate that their opponent was Aberdeen on the last day and not Motherwell. I think had it been the other way around, I think we're looking at results that are pretty much the same, if not St Johnstone getting beat by Aberdeen, because I just felt like the two teams, Motherwell had the air of a side that it's the last day of the season. Their chance to finish 7th and kind of best of the rest was gone in midweek with that 3-0 defeat to Hibs. it was like, okay, it's not been a great campaign, but at one point it looked in real danger of going down. That's not happened. Fine, right, okay, we're playing a team that's fighting for their lives. Let's get up for it. But then as soon as you kind of concede and then with the missed penalty, it's kind of like, right, whatever. Whereas Aberdeen, well, as you kind of mentioned earlier, like when somebody like St Johnstone is playing a team like Motherwell, don't have anything to play for, you just expect them to win because there's not much between the sides. In terms of talent gap, there is a big gap between Aberdeen and St Johnstone. And not only that Aberdeen had their tails up and were going for those 5 out of 5 wins. And just like their campaign was so miserable for so much of it that you can kind of see it's a team that's actually enjoying playing football again. And even though they're happy to see the end of this season, the players were still probably not looking at this game like, let's get this over with. I think they would happily play again, like if there was another game in midweek, for instance. Whereas I think most other teams, including Motherwell, would rather just be like, nah, it's fine. Let's just see this out. Whereas Aberdeen, because of all the shit that they went through, are actually kind of like, this is quite fun for a change. It's not been fun since it got put out of Europe, and even by that point, it stopped being fun on a domestic sense.
I think you've got to presume the new manager, Fowler, will be watching the games as well, and they'll probably know that. And a lot of those players are still, you would expect that several of those players will still be around next season. So I think there will be that aspect of it too. I think there's a wee note of caution on Aberdeen because their fans have been, rightly, because you would be when you've won 4 games and drawn 1 out of your last 5, and obviously the performance they put in the cup semi-final before that as well. But I've started to see like as if like, oh, Peter leaving, what a manager and all of this. And it's like, these are bottom 6 games with a bottom 6 that you shouldn't be in, and against some teams who are either the worst teams in the league or with very little to play for. So I think, yes, you can enjoy your summer a bit more because you've not been relegated, but I think it's always a bit of a issue when you start to overestimate how good some of the players have been on the basis of a few games at the end of the season when they've shown you for the first 33 what they are in some cases. I think I'm particularly thinking of the defence because I think the defence is simply not good that Aberdeen have. I don't think any of the centre-backs have played well this season, and I don't think I think McDonald have maybe seen a little bit of evidence that it could be good. I don't think any of the other centre-backs have really seen evidence that they should be wanting to keep them.
I'm not even sure about McDonald. I think he's just brought a lot more balance to the centre-half pairing than was there before. Jensen and Gartman were too similar. McDonald's a different player for either of them. Gartman's played better due to being alongside him. McDonald's played better than Jensen, but it's still not really saying an awful lot. And I saw Aberdeen fans kind of blaming him for the red card. I mean, he shouldn't. I mean, it's Jordan White, man. Just put him under a bit of pressure. You don't have to like haul his arm to the ground, basically, and undeniably then give away a penalty and a red card. You can make it a bit more subtle and kind of get your foot in there, and at the very least not send your team down to 10 men. But I thought Aberdeen fans saying like he was just kind of blaming him for getting in the wrong position to begin with. I just kind of thought he was a bit unlucky in the way that how the kind of ball bounced in front of him. But he does panic very much and then leaves his team in a bit of a hole thereafter.
Yeah, it was more clumsy than anything, and I think it wouldn't surprise me if eventually those, because there's already been a wee tweak on the double jeopardy rule, because I mean under the rules that is a red card because he didn't try and play the ball. It wouldn't surprise me if before long those are not red cards either, just on the basis that he didn't even try to foul him. It was just like very clumsy, like with how he kind of.
I don't know. I thought he deliberately pulled his arm down. So
I think he's like jostling for position, and before he knows it, he's like overdone that. But I know what you mean. But I think the other thing for Aberdeen's point of view, like Sokler's come into the team. I don't rate him. However, he finally got his first league goal. He scored in the Scottish Cup. He scored in the semi-final. He scored in the League Cup, and he scored in Europe.
4 goals. He scored 4 goals this season, and every single one of them have been in different competitions.
Quite an impressive for a striker, but he hasn't started that many games. No. He started some games, but he's been a sub a lot, and it's very hard when you have an incredibly good striker in Kyosuke to then be the guy who kind of is like, oh yeah, well, okay, you go on and live up to that. He's done after 70 minutes, or we're chasing a goal, we're 2-0 down to a team with half the budget of us again. Can you come on and try and find us a goal? So I don't think he's the answer for Aberdeen, but he's at least given them maybe something to think about. You've got to presume, I mean, Miofsky was excellent when he came on, when considering they're playing with 10 men, and could have had a goal as well. And every time he went up the park, I thought he's going to score here, but they defended him all right in those positions, probably with the extra man advantage it helped. But you've got to presume that was his last game for Aberdeen, and it will be interesting whether they think Sokler can be the one to step up now that he's got a year under his belt. I wouldn't count on it, but you never know. Sometimes a new manager can come in. But that was also a bit of the difference, that when Aberdeen at that point went to change it, they were able to bring on Duke, and they were able to bring on Miofsky. Now, Duke didn't necessarily do that much, but it's a very high calibre of player to bring on. Whereas when you look at Ross County's bench, the bench is not particularly attacking to begin with, because he's got Aina, Keller, Reid, who are two defenders and a defensive midfielder. You've got Ross Callaghan, who's not had a good season, not really been good since that time he was at Hamilton Accies, to be honest.
He's been injured, is he no?
He's been out as well, but he could have been a chaotic player to bring on. And then you had Luturi, good a player as he may be, not an attacking player, which only really left you with Sims, Brophy, and Jay Henderson.
Ross Callaghan hasn't played a single game this season. All
right, so that's that. I knew I hadn't seen much of him, and I'm like, right, he's obviously not doing what he normally does. But that's probably why he didn't come on. Maybe he's at least available for the playoffs. But the Sims came on with 10 minutes to go, and Brophy came on with 3 minutes to go. Neither of them have necessarily always been that great this year, but like, you're chasing a game, you need to stay up. Why are you leaving it so late? And Henderson, again, maybe it's not the type of game for him, because he's probably better on the break against teams, and is he good enough or not? You've got these attacking players on the bench. Why are you leaving, for example, Conor Randall on the park when you can put Jay Henderson at wing back? It's just wee things like that were like, it just felt like a missed opportunity that they could have done more. And I don't know where that leaves them for the playoff. I think they're favourites for the playoff, but they took an absolute hiding off Motherwell, and I think they were about to take a hiding off Aberdeen, potentially, if the red card and the penalty doesn't happen, because I don't think they played well at all up until that point. So,
and if it wasn't for the penalty and the red card, I would have won. I would have made a tremendous comeback, an incredible final day comeback, and won the Terrace Predictor League. That was one thing. If Aberdeen had got another goal, I had it.
I might have been in with a chance if I hadn't forgot it was for money and picked Kelly to win all 38 games.
How many did you finish behind?
I don't know, but to be fair, the games I would have picked as to lose would have been like the games against Celtic and Rangers that we won anyway. So I don't know that it would have. I don't know if it would have made that much difference. But we were all incredibly close to each other. But yeah, I think Aberdeen would have won that game and probably would have run away with it. So for Ross County, that's a bit of a worry about mentality heading into the playoffs. I mean, Simon Murray scored another goal. Simon Murray will score a goal, probably 2 goals in the playoff games, and that's what they're hanging their hat on. But you look at their defensive record recently, I think, if you look at the last 11 league games, there's only been 3 of them where they've not conceded 2 or more goals. And okay, they managed to beat Rangers despite conceding 2 goals. I think if they are to beat Wraith Rovers, it will probably be by... Sorry, that's the most stupid thing I was going to say, by outscoring, unless that's how typically you win a football game, but...
Even 2-legged ones.
They are not probably... I don't think they're going to win like 1-0 or 2-1 on aggregate. We will put it that way. If Ross County are to win this tie, it will be the same as last year, like 5-4 or something like that. And they might do that, but I don't think they have it in them to defend, even against Wraith Rovers team that will obviously be missing Kyle Turner, who is has been a big part of them of late. They do have Easton to come in and replace Turner, so it's like a bit like for like, but I think they will concede goals because they're not defending well at all. You saw that from the goals Aberdeen scored as well.
Yeah, aye, and kind of going back just to briefly mention Sokler again, I think you've seen at times he's certainly got ability. And he's quick, he's good in the air. I think the most that's let him down has often been his decision-making at times. he's done some really kind of daft things in the final third where he could have had more goals and assists, but that's the kind of thing that you can imagine we get better if you're able to play more weeks rather than just kind of coming off and get the bench for like 10, 15 minutes. Like, you're able to get into a rhythm. So yeah, I'm the same. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if he's like ends up being their main striker next season and then performs a lot better than he does this campaign and is able to get like 15 goals himself. But yeah, let's move on now. So we've done half an hour on the two games that matter. Let's try and do 5 minutes on the rest each, shall we? Beginning with the final game on Sunday. Bit of a snooze fest at the Tory Mac. Livingston won, Hibs won. Say goodbye to Livingston as a top flight side. And so it was good, like, for Livy to get a decent positive result to go out on. And for Hibs, it's just Hibs, isn't it? Like, this just felt like the perfect result for both teams. Like, in terms of, not perfect in terms of what you'd ideally want if you were that side, but encapsulates them quite well.
Yeah, when I saw Hibs went, obviously they got the big win in midweek, and when I saw they went ahead, I thought, all right, they're maybe going to finish the season with a couple of wins, and that'll kind of, like I say, with Aberdeen, at least you kind of go into your summer feeling a wee bit happier. That, but no, they conspired to concede a goal, and it's been a really disappointing campaign for Hibs, because I think they went into the season not sure of their manager, and the very first match of the season did very little to dispel those worries, but they got some big results in Europe. They managed to bin the manager early on, and I think there was a lot of excitement about when Montgomery came in, and I think even when you got to January, most Hibs fans were expecting to finish top six and probably still get into Europe again, and so to just for the season to fizzle out the way it has will be really disappointing, especially when they obviously had the big money boost, as it was allegedly in at the end of the window, and brought in, you know, your Marcondes, and you've got Maulida coming in, and Maulida's been a fantastic signing, and another goal for him there, and very much the type of goal that I feel that you see him score all the time, where he somehow, it's like halfway between a centre forward and an attacking midfielder somehow. It's like the 9.5 is kind of how I see him. I don't even know how to visualise that, but it's like the type of goal he scores, he always seems to pop up in a particular position on the park, and he usually like drops a shoulder and beats someone, and then manages to lash one into the net. But they haven't been a coherent football team all season, and I think that's been the problem. They've had players who have played well, they've had players who have had pretty good seasons on their own, but they've not been able to put pieces together, and that's been the kind of what we saw on Sunday, and it's what has been the issue throughout the year, I think, and particularly second half.
Did you notice that Livingston only had 5 subs in this game?
They've given up. They had to bring in a sub goalkeeper on an emergency loan.
Yeah, he came on.
Kieran Wright. Yeah, obviously, why not? That to me feels like, we've bothered to bring you in. Let's get you a game. And yeah, Tommy Sharp was on the bench as well, which I don't think is real. So you were really talking about 4 subs. All that was missed was an Arbroath situation where they used all their outfield subs and then had to bring Wright on as a centre forward or something, which will happen at some point in the Premiership now that with the 5 subs and teams like Livy, just they've stopped bothering. They stopped at the split. They knew they were down. They obviously still I think won a game, but I feel when you're a club like Livingston and Hamilton are the two that come to mind that are punching above their weight so much being in the Premiership in terms of, I don't even mean resource, but like the type of club they are. When it goes wrong, it goes badly wrong. It all falls apart. You saw that with Hamilton's relegation, and you saw it both times Hamilton went down, and you've seen it both times Livy went down. So the first time they went down was kind of a record low points tally. It wasn't quite as bad as that this season, but it wasn't far off it. 25 points is not very good in a league that, as we said, there are quite a few fragile teams in, and even if they kept the current team together, I don't think that current team would be challenging to win the championship. It would maybe be in contention for a playoff place. They won't keep the current team together. No. I think they're far more likely to get relegated than promoted next season. And obviously Martindale was, I don't want to say working a ticket again in his post-match, but he was obviously talking about this takeover, and if it goes, the deal goes the wrong way, or the court case goes the wrong way, then he won't be there. Very much felt to me like Martindale was again saying to the new owners, or saying to the people who might be the new owners, if you come in, feel free to get rid of me and we'll part in good terms, kind of thing. I don't think we'll be seeing Livingston in the top flight for a while. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. I know a lot of Livy fans are kind of just a bit fed up with Martindale now and kind of think he's done all that he can, and he's certainly done a hell of a lot for the club, keeping them in the top flight as long as he has done. And you can go back pretty much to the very start. Like after Kenny Miller left, Martindale was the guy in charge. Like they had Gary Holt as the front up manager, but realistically, Martindale was the guy in charge of the club. So it's a guy in charge of the first team. So he's done a tremendous job, and Livy fans are getting just a bit kind of fed up with the fact that him putting players in weird positions, seemingly kind of always has his favourites that he picks regardless, or doesn't pick on in post-match press conferences, and then there's other guys who he'll just happily throw under the bus. But at the same time, I do think there was any chance of Livy being competitive at all going forward, then you do kind of need a Davy Martindale there at your club and this would be the best example. This would be the best time to kind of get rid of so many of the players and right, let's start again. Let's build things back up again. But if he goes, then yeah, you can certainly envision a scenario where they end up like Aki's or Thistle done it not that long ago, where you have like relegations pretty much. Was Aki's back to back? Can't quite mind. Or did they have one?
No, they had one.
They had one where what was it? Stuart Taylor was manager. That was it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like guys, maybe not successive relegations, but a couple of relegations within a close period.
The only thing with obviously Doug Emery was at Livingston, but I don't know if he's in with the kind of Martindale type of thing, because if they were looking for a manager, and I don't know whether actually it's a step up from Morton anyway, but obviously Morton have also got no money.
Yeah.
From the looks of things, that would be a type of guy who might be able to do something with them if they come in. I thought it was, in terms of Hibs, like I thought it was slightly strange. Did you not that the Lone Stevenson didn't come on?
Yes, but
that's very. I would have expected it with Montgomery. I thought David Gray would have put him on. That was all.
Especially when you've only made 2 subs as well.
Yeah.
Like what you so happy about when you're watching this team away to Livingston? It's like, nah, I can't bring Louis on because it might throw off our balance against this tough opponent.
Yeah, I found that odd because I saw that he was on the bench and I saw that Hanlon obviously started, and I actually wondered if it was almost partly to have in mind that he was going to bring one on for the other, just to have the big situation. But I think Hanlon went off injured with a few minutes to go and they brought Tavares on instead. So I found that a little bit odd, but two fabulous servants to Hibs, obviously, and well, it sounds like they're both going to keep playing. I think they'll both be popping up in the Championship next season.
I would say so.
We'll wait and see.
I think they'll both do a decent job next year.
Stevenson to me will be a midfielder, centre mid in the Championship, and that'll be where you should be playing him because he's not got the legs to be a Championship fullback.
Right, let's get through the 3 games that took place on Saturday, and let's begin with Celtic having their title party, beating St Mirren 3-2, a late Palma goal, managing to win that one. I actually blanked on his first name there. Luis Palma scoring a late winner. I think the things that stood out for me for this one is that while Hatate very much to blame for, I would say, St Mirren's opening goal, when he just stands and looks at Mark O'Hara, like literally just kind of like bouncing up and down from about 3 yards away, and doesn't think, I should maybe stand goal side him in case the ball breaks his way. It does. O'Hara scores. Then you see Hatate with the cross for Kyogo, and a typical kind of Kyogo finish that's been absent from a lot of this year because he's just not had Hatate in the team making those runs where he goes beyond the defensive line of the opposition and cuts it across for Kyogo to score.
Yeah, I think they've just come onto form at the right time. I think Hatate was pretty poor in the game against Rangers last weekend, but the whole Celtic. I was at the game on Wednesday night against Kelly, and Celtic were as good as I've seen them for a very long time now. Yeah, Kelly were not necessarily at their best, and certainly seemed like we talked about when teams who have nothing to play for come up against worse teams who have everything to play for. If you come up against a team who are already much better than you and you're doing that, it's not going to go well. But St Mirren showed a bit, like, definitely was a bit more typical of what you've expected from teams against Celtic this season, and that they've kind of managed to turn up against them, and St Mirren turned in a good performance. But Celtic are, I don't know if that's positives for next season. They obviously they were 2 points behind Rangers with 19 games to go, and they won 8 and drew 1 of their last 9 games, and that one draw was at Ibrox. That's quite impressive from their point of view, and I do wonder if Rodgers is maybe kind of woken up a little bit, and whether next season he'll, do what we saw him do the first time, which is just not lose very many games. I mean, they only lost 3 times this season, and none of them to Rangers. But it's they need a wee turnover of the squad. But I think maybe what we've seen recently, because even with this, there were quite a few squad players used. They maybe don't need quite as much a turnover of the squad, but what they do need, as much as Palma scored the goal, is I don't think the 2 wide players should be starters for Celtic, the 2 that started this game.
Yeah.
As much as they're okay players, they're not perfect. Tony Ralston, I thought, did his chances of, I assume he'll be in the squad, but of whether if he is going to play against Germany, good in the sense, not defensively necessarily, but he's probably shown a lot more recently as an attacking outlet for Celtic, which is maybe what Steve Clarke really wants from his wing backs anyway. So there were little things to like about Celtic, but it's so hard to analyse these games when you've got stuff like a goalkeeper being subbed to get a standing ovation and things like that. And what isn't even his last game? He's playing the cup final next week. But yeah, it's so hard to properly kind of do this.
It's fine. We don't have to. Like, I could just say that Hart. It was. I wish I liked him more, because it would have been a nice moment. But it's hard. Did
they really deserve that? Like, has he been pivotal enough for Celtic to get like that level of? Do you know what I mean?
Probably not. It's probably Celtic fans just being overly nice, considering that he's not been, like, I think they've said a lot of the season that he's not been good enough for kind of them in European football. Domestically, he had a poor first half to the campaign. I think he has been he certainly has. He's been a lot better down the stretch this season, and kind of shown over the last couple of months that he's still one of the best goalkeepers in the league, and his form's been pretty solid for them, and so he's helped them win another title. He's retiring, I suppose. It's a nice thing the Celtic fans have done. Did they necessarily need to do it for Joe Hart? But it's the TiVo thing, and it's just kind of more about that culture these days, where you just make a bigger deal. Whereas it feels like in years gone past, you maybe not would have cared as much. But there's a lot more kind of showmanship to being a football fan these days, and I'm absolutely not just talking about Celtic when I say this. So, I know what you mean, but it kind of feels like the kind of thing that most teams would have done as well.
Just a word on Mark O'Hara. 33 top-flight goals for Mark O'Hara, and 10 of them have been against Rangers or Celtic.
Fair enough.
Including, I think this is the 3rd double he's had against one of them, which is quite unusual, I would say.
I know
even though it does take the penalties.
I noted down that, because it was said on the Sports Scene highlights that Gary Mackay-Steven had scored 6 goals in his career against Dundee from 17 games. And I was like, is that impressive? I suppose it's vaguely impressive. And then it was then mentioned on the next day's Sports Scene that Jamie McGrath had scored 5 goals against Ross County this season. It's like, okay, 6 goals from 17, maybe not that great.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. But yeah, it's funny when, like, you have these individual players who seem to just pop up against a single team and nobody else, though. Which is because I don't know, Mackay-Steven I wouldn't have really had down as a prolific goal scorer.
No. Right, let's get to the game at Tynecastle, a 6-goal thriller where Hearts equalising with pretty much the last kick of the game. God Christ. Kyosuke Tagawa. Fuck's sake. So close to the end, Craig. Come on, focus. Right.
Yeah, we're not getting a terrace podcast microsite, that's for sure.
Kyosuke Tagawa with a terrific volley, and it was one of those. What I liked about that goal was that the ball doesn't touch the ground from Xander Clark's big punt up the park. But by the time it touches the ground again, it's already hit the back of the net. So just really satisfying goal in that way, and just the way he comes in, great technique to sweep it home first time on the volley, and suddenly Hearts fans are like, do we keep him next year? Like, if anybody comes in with any kind of monetary offer, like for Hearts to get like even a portion of their transfer fee back and to get what I would assume is a fairly kind of guy on fairly decent wages off the wage bill, then they will take it. But I wonder whether his 2 goals in 2 games to end the campaign raises a question of whether Hearts do sell Tagawa if somebody comes in with an offer of nothing, just to get him off the books. Tony and Joel talked about this in the Patreon in midweek, and Tony made the point, it's just like there's too many forwards at Hearts that just kind of all do similar jobs but can't really be relied on. Vargas, Oda, Forrest. Do you need another one? And I would say no. So I would happily see Tagawa go for fuck all in the summer, and at least had a nice wee end to his thoroughly underwhelming season at Tynecastle.
It was a brilliant goal, and as you say, a big moment, a very good moment for. I think the only thing with an end of season nothing game is when you get a big comeback like Hearts did it in the Championship season, right? They came from 2-0 down against Rangers. Yeah, it's like it's not. I talked about a lot of the games not being memorable. You probably will still remember kind of coming from 3-1 down in the last 10 minutes against Rangers. And I think the other thing would be Lawrence Shanklin getting another goal. Just he's obviously playing for something at the moment.
Yes.
Although the guy at the other end also playing for I was going to say a place in the squad. I'd be extremely surprised if
probably
Clark wasn't in the squad after the antics of Liam Kelly again on which we never touched on.
Yeah.
But he, I didn't think Clark he made a good save in the second half, but none of the goals necessarily looked like he covered himself in that much glory.
I don't know about that. I think he's maybe a little slow at McCausland's. I don't think he can do anything about Cantwell's. I don't think he can, like, the Silva one happened so quickly because the defence at Lembekiza just completely goes to sleep. And I think Clark's not even expecting a shot to come in at that point. So I don't think he can really do much about that either. And the angles in sports scene weren't great, but the 2 saves he makes in the first half from, are they both for Dessers? Yeah, they are. Where I was sitting, they looked a lot better than they looked on sports scene. So it's one of them in particular that he saves at the back post. You don't really, the camera angle for the main stand at Tynecastle, for the Wheatfield stand at Tynecastle, didn't really kind of show how much he kind of had to extend his arm and how strong an arm he got to that. So I thought Clark actually did have a good game. Shanklin, going back to you mentioning him, I feel it was important for him to score a one-on-one, considering that I think he did go off the boil a little bit in front of goal after missing that chance against the Netherlands. But when he does it for Hearts, it was funny because I said it in the group chat after he scored that it was weird to have a Hearts forward go through and goal, especially when you're playing Rangers and you just think this is a goal. And I also thought as well, he's going to wait until Butland commits himself and then he's going to dink it over them, and he did. And then I posted that in the group chat, and then obviously the second half he sent through one-on-one again, takes a horrendous first touch, and the chance is gone. But I think even had he managed to keep that under control, he probably would have kept his cool then again. And yeah, like I say, I think that's good for him ahead of what will be his last game before he plays for Scotland game, to not fully banish the demon of that miss away against the Netherlands, because that could end up costing him a starting place at the Euros.
I don't think Steve Clarke will care about that. I don't mean he won't care about it, but I don't think he doesn't strike me as a person who is he's much of more of a process than an outcome person, if you know what I mean.
That's true, but I think he was looking to that game for, right, can Shanklin be the answer for us? And had Shanklin scored, then I think that would have provided a yes. Whereas him missing that, I'm not sure whether Clarke will think it's enough to start Lyndon Dykes and his 4-goal season, whatever the hell it was for QPR this campaign.
But yeah, and is there anything else to say? Rangers picked, they were one of the few teams that picked a couple of the young boys in their team, but it seems a bit pointless to me. That left back that they picked, he's never going to be a Rangers player. He's 21. He's not suddenly, they're not suddenly going to have turned over a new superstar in Robbie Fraser. When he's like, yeah, if you are 21 and you have been playing for, you have not made your debut for Rangers until that point, and you've not even been out on like major loans like in the Championship or other Premiership clubs, it's simply not going to happen. So it did feel a bit like proving a point.
Should have had his own TiVo display.
Right, exactly. I mean, you never know. That'll be him away. That'll be him.
It'll be after the cup final. or during the cup final, last 10 minutes. Anything else to say about this game? The only thing I was going to say about Dessers, they showed him missing his chances on the sports scene, but they left off the one that stood out to me the most because it reminded me so much of the chance he missed against Dundee last midweek, where it was very much similar ball. It was the first half as well, and I think it was the first half in both games. Ball fired across goal from the right, and like just most forwards would read it coming and just kind of open yourselves up, like open your body up, so then you can just go out with your left foot and simply cushion it into the back of the net. In both instances, he just swings wildly with his right. It comes off like not his foot, like just some part of his leg, and flies over the crossbar. It was so, like, it seemed to me at the time it was so carbon copy, and it was like, he's just such a weird player. Such a weird player. Like, are you good? Are you not? I can't make my mind up.
Ewan and I were speaking about him on the Strikers podcast, and we couldn't come to a conclusion either. He's probably going to score in the cup final. That's my only prediction.
In a Rangers defeat.
It might be like 4-1 to Celtic, but I think he'll score.
Right, final game. Dundee 1, Killie 1. Killie opened the scoring through Gary Mackay-Steven. Dundee equalised after a VAR check overruled a disallowed goal with Luke McCowan getting into double figures. But crucially, McCowan finished at 10 goals for the season because he had the chance to get one more in the 89th minute and blasted his penalty wide of goal. Craig, what can you tell me about this one? I thought there was major, even though it didn't look like the best of games, there was major end of season wacky vibes to this one when you saw John McCracken, the Dundee goalkeeper, making a tackle at the halfway line in what wasn't a counter attack.
Yeah, there was just he was quite lucky because if he doesn't like there's a red card potential in being there. Yes. I would say at that point, but it felt like when you saw the Killie team that went out, and McInnes had said in midweek or in his pre-match about it that he wanted to give it, because Killie have barely changed the team since Christmas. Like, I think it's been like 13 players basically played every single game. There's been very little change, and he said he wanted to kind of reward the guys who hadn't played much. So that obviously meant Mackay-Steven coming in, Fraser Murray coming in particular. Tried to give O'Hara a game, but he got injured in the warm-up, so Dennis was in anyway. So there was obviously that wee bit of rotation to the squad, and Murray played well. Mackay-Steven obviously chipped in with a goal. These guys are not the guys you want to be relying on, but fortunately for Killie, the two wingers that played the season didn't get injured at any point, were pretty much always available. Killie started the game pretty well, and I think Mackay-Steven had a pretty, I wouldn't call it a good chance, but he nearly made it 2-0 after he'd scored as well, and probably if that goes in, Killie go and kind of win the game comfortably. But then it's a strange goal, the Dundee goal, because it is onside, but it kind of looks for all the world like it shouldn't be. Wasn't the best defending, and then from that point on, I don't think loads happened in the game, would be the kind of best way to put it, up until obviously the red card, which is a strange one with the I think he was unlucky with his first yellow D's, but the second one, I don't know how he doesn't get him. I initially, because I didn't see the game live, so I initially thought when I saw it was like a mistaken identity, I'm like, the two of them are going to be kind of close and in the same tackle, but no, it's just Robbie D's making the tackle. No, Stuart Finley's nowhere in the vicinity, but obviously Finley's smart enough to know that to happily take the booking if it means his teammate not being sent off. But obviously in the VAR era, that's not going to wash. No. It's obviously disappointing from a dead rubber game to get a suspension, but as I was saying, the opening game of the league season will be in amongst the European games for Kelly anyway, so it's just an opportunity to rotate, which they would probably have done anyway. And then there's a penalty, which is a penalty, and to be fair, Dennis dives the right way, so he might have had a chance to save it anyway, but McCowan didn't give him any opportunity to save it by putting it that far wide. But yeah, there's so little to say about this game. Dundee will be a bit disappointed by how the season finished for them, I think, because...
very much the air of a side that got to the top six. Didn't think they were going to do that at the start of the season, and then, didn't really... Down tools is the harsh way of putting it, but you know what I mean, like, just didn't seem to have the same intensity after that was the kind of celebration. Yes, we've made this achievement, whereas they could have really gone on and got European football, but it was killed for them by that game against
St Mirren.
Against St Mirren, when they were just second best right from the off.
I think it's a bit vibes of like when you are not used to finishing in the top six. It's at St Mirren last season, and most of their points came from the bottom half teams as well. Like you're kind of got that double thing of like you're almost celebrating that first achievement, and then you're playing against teams that have generally beaten you this season, and it can put a wee bit of a downer on a very good season for them. But you hope that you saw what happened with St Mirren. They did it the first time, and last year they never done much after the split. This season, St Mirren hardly pulled up any trees after the split themselves, but they did enough in getting the 4 points and mainly getting the win against Dundee that made sure that they got the Europeans place, and that will be the inspiration for Dundee for next season. That if we can, do that again, maybe when we get in after the split, we're a bit more used to it, and we can get something better than 1 point out of the post-split games. So, yeah, there's... I think either team will read very much into this game. It was a bit of a celebration for the Kelly crowd that went to the game, and Dundee were kind of very much ticking a box to say 38 games completed. So, yeah, a nice way to finish a campaign. It was nice. It's funny because coming into the split, obviously with Kelly being 9 points clear of St Mirren coming into the split, I was like, I just want a nice, chilled out finish to the season, because we've not really had that of late. And we got it, but then I was a bit like, I was sitting on Saturday, I'm like, I'm not interested in this game, I don't really care. And I'm almost like, I wish there was something riding on it. So it's kind of, you kind of you can be careful what you wish for, I suppose.
Right, Craig, that'll do us. Thank you very much for joining me.
No, you're very welcome, and thanks for another season for all the listeners putting up with us.
Yes, but we've still got loads of shows. We're not just finishing up there. We've still got So coming up later this week will be myself and Telfer on Thursday evening, immediately after, or as quick as possible, after the Premiership playoff final first leg is done. We'll then have another show... next Monday, I would reckon that would be, it would be next Monday. Not sure who will be on it yet, but we'll be covering the Scottish Cup final and the playoff final second leg. And then there's a couple other kind of bonus podcasts to go up. And then we'll be producing shows as we gear up for Germany, and then doing some podcasts, hopefully with all the will in the world if things don't go wrong on the technology front, doing some podcasts from Germany as well. So we're all very much looking forward to that.
Sorry, I shouldn't put you on the spot here, but squad announcements on Wednesday. So is there a podcast for that coming up? Did you say that?
Myself and Telfer could handle that on Thursday. We'll cover the playoff final, and then we'll just go into whatever. If there's any news, that should be with the 26-match squad. There should be something we're like, oh, that's interesting.
There's about to be. I think with the numbers, there should be one surprise, I would guess, but I don't know who it will be.
But anyway, until you hear us again, if you don't want to wait as long, you can always check out the Patreon. There'll certainly be a lot of content going up this week as we do a number of podcasts looking at teams' individual seasons. So if you want to get involved, that is patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. The cheapest tier is only £2 per month. Make sure to follow us on YouTube. We are at Terrace Podcast. We're the same on Twitter, or X as it's called. Same on Threads. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the fun social media sites. Anyway, goodbye.